Okay, good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to the January 6, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And how about Commissioner Johnson? You want to lead us? Everybody else can mute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you very much. Michelle, can we please have roll call?
John Marshall.
Here.
Peter Gower.
Here.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Arthur Munoz.
Here.
Paula Levis.
Here.
Alex Felto.
Here.
Kathleen Taylor.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, public comment. This item is for public comment on any action or for any general public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
I received one public comment for this item from Linda Cross regarding the zoning for the Lake Ridge development, and that was forwarded to the Planning Commission and to staff.
Okay, thank you. We will close public comment and move on to item number 4, approval of the minutes from the December 3rd Planning Commission meeting.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gower, I'll move to approve those minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Marshall, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Look, any,
Commissioner Levis, I abstain.
okay, thank you, Commissioner Levis. It looks like the motion passes with Commissioner Levis abstaining. And we will move on to item number 5, public hearings. This agenda item 5.1 is case number LVC 21-00021 Town Drive Boat and RV Storage. A request has been made for a special use permit to establish a mini warehouse boat and recreational vehicle storage. Michelle, do we have a presentation from the applicant?
We will have a presentation from Dave Snellgrove. We're just moving him in. Just give me one moment.
I believe I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Hello.
Yeah, well, it's good to see everybody, albeit on Zoom. I look forward to when we can actually get back in the chambers, but I'll figure out if I can do the share screen right tonight. I think this is it here. Let me know if you see my full screen of a title page.
We see it, and you have 15 minutes to do your presentation.
Very good. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. With me on the line tonight, Mr. Phil Busick, who's the project applicant, should also be in, and Kathleen Knight, who's our civil engineer on the project, that she should be on as well if we have any questions for her relative to some of the engineering. And let me get over to that screen. Come on. There we go. So the property location is at the northeast corner of Town Drive and South Virginia Street, Old 395. So we abut the old highway on the western side, and on the eastern side of the site is Steamboat Creek. The existing site conditions, the site's relatively flat. It's got a gentle grade that goes down towards Steamboat Creek the farther west you go. On the site, there's an existing billboard. That billboard is conditioned and required to be removed with the construction of the project. We do have, you can see this H-frame power line. That's an NV Energy power line that cuts across the bottom part of the property, running from northwest to southeast. We have been in conversation with Chris Robinson over at NV Energy relative to the transmission use agreement, which will have to be done prior to us constructing and actually operating this. These line heights are really high. They're in the order of 45, 55 feet high. So we shouldn't have any conflict with power lines. We just have to get the appropriate easement and agreement set up to construct and then to operate below those. This is a shot down in the bottom right-hand corner. That is from Town Drive up towards the nearest adjacent houses that are on the county unincorporated land up to the west. They tend to be the closest one to where our development area is about 300 feet, and the farthest one is 400 plus or minus feet. And they do have about a 60-foot elevation gain from what the finished grade of our site is. Site over time, and Phil's owned it for a couple of years now. It's been used off and on as a dumping ground. The picture on the left and the picture on the bottom of the screen, those are two that I found just recently that hadn't been out there before. I put this picture in on the top right-hand corner. This pile of rocks had to be put there by Phil as a blockade. There's a gravel area just south of our site that Phil also owns. Somebody had dropped a dilapidated motorhome there, and it became Phil's problem. At about $2,500 later to get that removed, and a code enforcement issue on him, he got wise and said, okay, I got to put something up to keep people from going and just using this property as their dumping ground. And that was right adjacent to Town Drive. I believe that the residents were upset about that. Phil ultimately got it taken care of, but yeah, that became a code enforcement issue. So with development, some of this goes away just because you have eyes, and in our case, we'll have video cameras and things like that on the site. The property is master planned and zoned appropriately. It's master plan suburban mixed use, and it's zoned mixed use, Redfield Regional Center, retail, commercial, agricultural. And what I've put here is a copy of the table of uses that identifies the mini warehouse, which boat and RV falls under. It requires a special use permit under that RRC, RCA zone. And then a copy of the map, and the map shows these red areas on the Redfield Regional Center plan, the development concept land use plan. All these red areas are that RRC, RCA zoning. There's a yellow X down here by Town Drive. That is where our property is located. So this is a copy of the landscape plan. You can see we've got full perimeter landscaping of the site. We have canopies on the site there in the darker gray, and they have to be outside of that power line transmission use agreement area. So we only have them to the north of that power line. There would be one building on the site, and that is down here kind of at the south, toward the south eastern corner of the site. That would be the manager's office. It will also hold a bathroom that'll be accessible from the interior of this gated area. So for the renters, there will be a bathroom facility that they can utilize. They pull up and drop their boat or RV off, and they need to use a restroom. That facility is here. Manager's office will obviously have its own restroom inside, and we have our parking out in front, and there will be pull-up space for larger vehicles as well. You'll notice on the site plan that off to the eastern side, there's a big area that's just this kind of, I'm not sure what color that is, but that's an undeveloped area. So the total site is 4.8 acres. We're only developing 3.15 acres of the site, leaving 1.65 acres. Approximately 34% of the site is undeveloped. The reason for that, the floodway area is off over here on the far right-hand side of the property, and we've got some of the AE zoned property too that we're not developing. So we're staying out of that more flood-prone, marshy area that one of the comments in a petition that was submitted talked about that. So I want to point that out. This purple line running up the eastern side of the property is a trail which will have amenities, probably some interpretive signage or things like that respecting the history of the creek and creating a nice pedestrian environment, which is actually required as part of the Redfield Regional Center plan. That trail will follow the alignment and be in conjunction with a sewer line and reclaimed effluent line that Washoe County will be bringing down to this area and going farther south. probably over the next year or two. The timing of this project is definitely contingent upon that sewer line coming in. We won't be running off a septic system or anything like that. So I want to make sure that that's clearly pointed out, all of you. And the trail is actually in condition 2. That's in condition number 11 in your staff report. This is a copy of the Redfield Regional Center Plan Pedestrian Circulation Plan. And what I did is blew up this orange box area so you could see our property a little bit better. The green line's a trail. There is also a trail that exists on the eastern side of the creek that gets a fair amount of use as well. But so out in the area, there will be 2 trails that you could arguably do a loop, or maybe a rather lengthy loop, before you can cross the steamboat ditch again. There will be sidewalk and pedestrian paths along the frontage to town drive that's required as part of code, and also is shown on this Redfield Regional Center Plan and along South Virginia Street, starting to create some pedestrian connectivity up and down that corridor, which was the former highway. The civil engineering plan shows the extent of our graded area, and it kind of reconfirms that we're not grading. It's all just natural topography over off to the eastern side of the site. We do have the NV Energy power line that runs through the site. That's shown here in yellow. And that's an area where we can't put canopies. We can park under it, but having the canopies and the built structures we wouldn't be allowed to have. It's a very rare occasion that NV Energy allows that. There had been some questions and concerns in the petition and some of the other letters that came in relative to the location of the dump station. We've got a reasonable distance to the creek. However, if it's felt that this may be better somewhere else, we can look at relocating it. We would like to keep it in because we do feel that it's a helpful amenity to have in a facility like this. If people are coming back from a trip and they're able to do their dumping of their tanks, this would connect in with the sewer line. So it's not like we've got a septic tank or something that if flooding happened, we've got on site, and the sewer lines are right next door to this. So we can work with staff, and this is actually required to be approved by NDEP and the Washoe County Health Department through conditions that this will be looked at quite a bit. And we'll make sure that that is in a safe location. If it needs to be moved, we can relocate it to another place. Then I just highlighted the floodway area over off to the eastern side of the site, and that would have pedestrian path and amenities running through this area. So there's a good pedestrian connectivity in respect of the history of the Steamboat Creek. One of the changes that we made from the other site plans I showed you, when we initially submitted this, we had the parking out closer to the street and the building was back. It worked out very well with our bathroom and access into the gate. So we'll have gating. Our parking is going to be to the north of the building, and the building will be closer to town drive. That is per a mixed use requirement development standard. So we have made that change, and that came out of our initial comments from staff. This is a copy of the flood zone map from the Washoe County GIS. This striped area is the floodway, and that is the area that we are definitely staying out of. We've got a zone AE area strip in this blue. And then the majority of the site, with a little bit outside of the flood zone X, is up here on the western side. The thing about boat and RV storages is they actually work very well in these flood-prone areas, because other than the actual manager's office, which we needed to have it farther back to get separation from the intersection, but that's the only building that we'll have on the site. Everything else could be relocated, moved, may or may not need to be moved on the site, off of the site, depending upon flooding. So the flexibility of the site relative to a flooding environment actually is very conducive. The architecture of the site, Dale Cox prepared this, and I think it turned out wonderfully. The manager's office has a very nice appearance. We will have landscaping around the perimeter and a security wall around. I'll go through other parts of this. The canopies will be seen then where we have canopies up against South Virginia Street. They're going to incorporate what's called a curtain wall that'll come down. It basically will help to screen off the backs of any of the boats and RVs that are up there closer to Virginia Street, which is where we have it. I think we have one on the northern side of the site too, that'll have the same treatment. You can see that the manager's building has four-sided architecture. It wasn't just treated on the front or what's highly visible. It'll have a good appearance from the eastern side where the residents are as well. The traffic came up as a question on the site. We are on the outside of a curve, which actually helps for visibility. I have two photos here. One from the south, it would be south of the entry, that kind of shows what the visibility is around that corner. And it's really pretty clear and available. And then I have one from the western side of the site that looks back towards where the entry would be. And you can see that there's a very clear view along Town Drive for entry and exit to the site. So it's on the outside of the curve. When we ran this through the ITE website or their software, the number of units that we'd have or storage units came up to 22 average daily trips, which is very low. That's about the equivalent of 2+ houses, 2 AM trips and 4 PM peak hour trips. So those are all very low and don't come close to breaking the threshold of a necessity for any type of traffic report. It's one of the lower intensity uses that you're going to find relative to traffic. NDOT encroachment permit will be required as part of this. There were some concerns and questions about the intersection. That is actually intersection of Town Drive in South Virginia. That's actually controlled by NDOT, and we will have to go through their process, get any encroachment permits or live by their rules and regulations. That is conditioned as condition number 9 in your staff report. We did a biological study and a cultural resource inventory of the site. And those are both documents that end up being relatively confidential just because what they show, SHPO and NDF are involved and they know where things are. They did find a couple on the biological study. They found a couple small populations of steamboat buckwheat on the site. Our thought and goal, and we'll have to get this all proven out and they'll have to accept it, NDF will, is to relocate those to another piece of property that Phil Busick owns. He owns about 155 acres to the south as well. And to relocate those down where there's another population. That'll all have to be proven out. The person that we are working with, Nancy Santos, believes that that will probably be acceptable, but we will have to run that through the process. The cultural resource inventory did find that the power poles were old enough, but they didn't really, they were not eligible for the National Registry of Historic Places. And also too, and this one was a little disheartening, they had one archaeological find. It was one crushed aluminum can with a pull top. And this was a little disheartening because I remember using those. And that also too was not eligible to go on to the National Registry of Historic Places. Both of these studies have been provided to staff as part of the application. But again, those are confidential things. They were both listed as that. And just because they don't want people going out and finding either an archaeological find or the steamboat buckwheat locations and have a map to them. The MURCC-RCA zone, that retail commercial academic, would allows for a lot of uses by right. I gave only a small sample of them up here, but I was looking through the list as I was preparing this presentation up. And just some of the uses that could go on here without a special use permit include a gas station, medical marijuana dispensary, general retail store, building landscape materials or lumber yard, bar, a restaurant with or without alcohol sales, all of which would have much higher traffic impact and lighting impact and all sorts of things associated with it over what this will have. Comments from the neighborhood. Looking through the petition, I tried to pull each one out that I could find and tried to give a response or some kind of recognition of it. Dump station close to the creek. I mentioned that earlier that potentially could be moved. It could potentially be removed. I don't think that would be desirable or helpful with the use. I'd prefer to keep it in, but that's something that has a certain degree of flexibility if that does become a concern to the health department or the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. historically significant area. There's going to be a trail along this that respects the creek and some of that history. In learning about this property over the past couple of years with Mr. Busick, we found out about a lot of the history with the V&T Railroad line going through this area, and some through our cultural resource inventory, finding about some of the Indian tribes. Mr. Busick is actually very excited about some of that history because some of the other things along the creek, there's a requirement for a trail along that, and he sees that as being really a big positive in association with the property. So we greet that with open arms as far as the historical significance of the area, and we want to be respectful of that. Sandy marshy wetland flood prone areas, we're staying out of the floodway area, which is where that area primarily exists. As you go up the hill a little bit farther, it's dry and it's a little more silty, sandy. And that's the area that we're looking to develop. Migratory birds, no development in the floodway. That's where your primary bird habitat's going to be. That's where any riparian vegetation and trees are, which are.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we need to wrap this up as soon as possible.
Did I already go through 15 minutes? Holy
smokes.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will wrap up very, very quickly. We already covered traffic. This is a quiet and low traffic generating use. The lights in this will be on sensors, so most of the time the lights will be off. If nobody's in there at night, the lights will be off with the exception of any security lights up around the front or the entry is what we're anticipating. Plans for water, we're going to obviously have to have fire hydrants and things like that, or some suitable alternative. And we have been in conversation with the fire department. So I'll close. We agree with the staff's recommendation, and we're in agreement with the conditions as presented. If you have any questions for myself or Phil Busick or our engineer, we are available to answer those. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Michelle, do we have a presentation from City of Reno team?
Yes, we do. Brooke has a presentation. Dave, could you take your presentation down, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me find where, there it is. Stop share. There we go.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner with the City of Reno. Good to see you all. I have a brief presentation and shouldn't go as long, but let me get that up here really quickly. Why is that not popping up? Just had it up. Okay, is that visible?
No.
No?
No.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Could you blow it up though?
Yep. Did that blow it up?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Once again, Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. Moving through the first slide. Let me get that. All right. I've got two screens up here. Okay, so as we look at this project review, and also we're looking at the constraints of this, as Dave went through, there are several constraints to this site and there are several challenges on this site. As staff conducted their review and analysis, what we're using are those mixed use standards and requirements. That's why Dave saw the building move forward and some of those other ideas. We're also using that Redfield regional plan in that retail commercial. It's actually academic, not agricultural, so that would probably be appropriate as that. Dave went through a lot of those other allowed uses. As we look at RV storage or mini storage, they are what we consider a low impact use. Traffic is very low. You usually don't have other sites highlighting or some of those other items that we'd be concerned about. We're also using the Public Works Design Manual to review this. And as you went through many of those conditions, you can see that there's many outside agencies because of the sensitivity of this site and some of the environmental in this site. So we have NEDP, we'll have Department of Agriculture, potentially SHPO, potentially our land, Nevada Lands and others on that. I have reached out to some of those state agencies and have run these conditions and, verifying with them that it helps to cover their permitting and their permitting process. And they are in agreement of how we put these conditions together. As we're looking at those site conditions, we are adjacent to Steamboat Creek. Two things, major things come with that. One, the floodway, as Dave demonstrated. And then two, there is potential for mercury that's coming from our mining history and all along Steamboat Creek. Additionally, we have those biological and potentially archaeological issues there. Steamboat Creek, steamboat buckwheat, which is a protective species, is located in that area. And as Dave identified on the site itself. Additionally, we have feral horses out in that area, and we need to look for both the safety of those horses and the horses in the roadway. So keeping those horses off the roadway. And then our access is both controlled by NDOT, and then the other town road is a county road and will be controlled by the county as that moves forward. So with their project proposal and as staff analyzed this, and their design considerations, they avoided that floodway, which was a major concern. The cultural and biological reports were submitted. Staff did review those, and I did reach out to both of the consultants and spoke through them on their concerns in that. There is sensitivity in those reports, but they were very helpful in helping me to understand what would be the process on that. And then additionally, one of the conditions you see is for testing. We asked that the site prior to any construction needs to be tested for mercury. If mercury is discovered on that site, then they would work through the NEDP to provide a mitigation plan and the appropriate permitting and everything that would be required. That would have to happen prior to any construction happening on site. Additionally, those public agencies for the steamboat buckwheat, what they have is called the takings permit. I did speak with them and I did mention the proposal of the state, and I did mention the proposal of the potential to transplant those. And that was something they felt they would be supportive of. Obviously, it needs to go through the process. Next thing we're looking at is that stormwater and sewage. All the stormwater will be per our city standards and Public Works design manual. Anything prior to going to the detention station, we have a standard code that requires that oil grease separators are all in intakes, relieving some of that concerns that we'd have with oil and water, and other best management practices will be employed to prevent potential for contaminants into our waterways. Additionally, that sewage system, there is a review by both the county and the state on that. The city also, and that will be connecting, as they said, we're not looking at a leach field or septic or that will be contingent on that sewer line from the county and that connection to that sewer line. Additionally, the city requires, as part of our Public Works design manual, is a maintenance and operation manual. It will have to be submitted from the applicant. That would go over everything of how they're going to maintain those dump stations, stormwater, clean out their systems, make sure that they're working correctly. As the applicant went over, the architecture and the area's architecture. Additionally, there's which meets those standards of the MU. Additionally, staff's review of that is we're looking at that we are moving to that rural area. The components and architecture and that they used seems to be complementary to that more rural as we move to that more rural area. Additionally, those lighting restrictions, there's a dark sky restriction restricting that area and helping to minimize those light impacts. Additionally, they have proposed light sensors and other methods to really reduce the lighting out there. Additionally, their hours of operation are limited and within what is operable and seem very reasonable to the city of Reno employees. We're looking at that site circulation. Once again, we have to go through that NDOT and county. All that permitting will have to go through, so all the proper accesses will be met. When we're looking at that NDOT, additionally, we'll be looking at, they have a fence that is along there that will be, protects the feral horses from entering the roadway. And the applicant will have to work with NDOT and how that's going to be maintained through their construction. When we're looking at their directional entrance, they have a one-way in and one-way out. It's very clear. They also provide the ability to pass so that circulation can happen and we can avoid cars backing up and the entrance is very clear and regulated of where that will go in. That the gate will be obviously code restricted and controlled that way. They have proposed that construction of the trail system. We would anticipate that seen on that county sewer easement. There is a condition, city staff, as that moves forward and there's more certain, as that easement moves forward and that trail moves forward, the applicant is required to work with the city and the county and anyone else who applicable there to help to construct and build that more of a regional trail network there. And then we have that frontage of the sidewalk where we're creating that more pedestrian area and the sidewalk and some of those other improvements that we would see along that frontage. There is a requirement for native and waterwise landscapes. That's coming, one, myself as a landscape architecture and always encouraging that sense of place, but two, we're looking at the noxious weeds and helping to prevent the spread of those and to maintain. And one of the best ways is to encourage native plants. And two, we're looking at the feral horse populations. We really want to discourage any turf or other thing that would attract the horses to that area and the potential hazards that come with that. Dave mentioned the power line. They are respecting all of the requirements and standards of that power line. We looked at this from a screening and also our CPTED standards. That's crime prevention through environmental design. So those, we want to screen the use, but we also want to make sure that we're providing visibility and other security things so that police or general public can make sure that that property is maintained and safe. As far as our emergency services, a lockbox will be required per conditions, allowing access to the site for our services. There were potential concerns of water considerations in that area being a little further. There is water available. There'll be a little further investigation to make sure that the water requirements are there for the fire. In talking with the fire marshal, there is the opportunity to use a section of code that is more applicable to these more rural areas and specifically this use where we have very minimal structures in that. What we'd anticipate that is that the small building would be sprinkled and there'd be some other alternative source of water or things for the fire. And so we have kind of two options on how we would go to the fire on that. Additionally, that removal of the existing billboard would be done. And then through that MU requirement, we have a public amenities. Dave mentioned that a little bit. That is a project cost, or in our new code, it's a percentage. We're obviously encouraging that history and some of those other things in that site, both environmentally to get that education over to the public and through interpretive signage or other means or artwork. Public comment on this, the project was properly noticed. We are, because of COVID, we do have restrictions on both our NABs and our CABs, so it does restrict our ability to get that information out to the community in an earlier fashion and some of these things. The notice public concerns that I pulled through, we have those traffic impacts, the natural systems and water quality, the trails, open space connectivity, and those emergency services. As outlined in the staff report and as those conditions sort of show, that those are very similar concerns that staff had, and staff worked with the applicant very hard to craft conditions that help to mitigate those potential impacts there. So with that, staff can make all the findings with what has been presented by the applicant and with the conditions as written, and does recommend approval of the project. I am available for questions as necessary. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brooke. Commissioners, let's go through disclosures. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Johnson, I am familiar with the site and received and read numerous emails on the project.
Commissioner Marshall.
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Gower.
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Olivas.
I visited the site and saw the emails.
Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Velto, same disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, same disclosures.
And Commissioner Taylor, same disclosures. Michelle, this is a public hearing. Do we have public comment for this item?
We did receive public comment for this item. All the emails were forwarded to the Planning Commission and to staff and has been entered as part of the record. We do have 5 voicemails that we will play for you in just one moment.
Yeah, hi. My name is Joe Valenzuela. I am calling regarding case number LDC 21-00021. The project name is Town Drive Boat and RV Storage. And I would just like to say that I am opposed to this project. I live in Steamboat Estates, just above the area where the proposed project would be located on Rhyolite Circle. And I believe that this kind of project would be an eyesore on our community, and also that it would attract a lot of extra traffic to our area because people will be bringing their boats and RVs, and it's going to cause a lot of traffic congestion. And also the proposed RV dump is going to cause a lot of unpleasant odor and smell in the area, and also it's going to attract various types of rodents, and it's just going to create an unhealthy environment for our community. And so I would just like to say that I and my family are strongly opposed to this proposed development and would encourage the council to not approve this development and to hopefully keep the area beautiful and serene as a way that South Reno is. It's more of a rural setting and a rural environment, and we would like to keep it that way. So thank you for hearing my comments and for your consideration. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
This is Mary Ann Olsner, and the case number is LDC 21-00021, the Town Drive Boat and RV Storage. I am very, very much opposed to this project. I live in the homes that are off of Town Drive, which becomes Zircon and then other streets. And I want you to know that this is our only access in and out of the area, and we are very, very much involved. So why in the world did you not send us the yellow cards that the people up in the trailers received concerning this project? I am a homeowner, as well as many other people down here in this area, and this is obviously quite a mistake on your part. So please know that we are very concerned about this area, and we feel that this should be a park. This should not be any kind of RV storage, boat storage, and dump station, which is a horrible, toxic location next to the Steamboat Creek, and the Steamboat Creek empties into the Truckee River. So you should absolutely reconsider this whole project. It's going to be massive buildings with a high fence all around it, and we don't need such an eyesore in our area. These people who live in the apartments too, I feel so sorry for those people, because obviously that project was not planned for any kind of open space for these people, and many have small children. And that area with the roundabout is so dangerous. I saw a woman I saw a woman trying to cross there with a dog, and it was very, very dangerous. So please reconsider such a project. We don't need.
Yes, my name is Mitch Neal. We live in the Steamboat area above where you want to do this project down there. It's called LDC 21-00021. That's Town Drive, going to be a boat RV deal. This isn't exactly any floodplain. It don't need to be built down there. You're going to create a total disarray of planning. That's our opinion there. You don't need to do it. Thank you very much. I do appreciate this time. Have a good day. Bye.
Hi, I'm Norma Davidson. Case number is LDC 21-00021. Applicant name is Leslie Land Company, LLC. Project name is Town Drive Boat and RV Storage. I'm protesting this being put in. I've been here 30 years. There's only one way into Town Road and one way out. And we have to pass that, and the traffic, this is going to bring a whole lot of traffic in, and it's going to affect our Steamboat Creek. And anybody downstream, the cattlemen that waters their cattle and irrigates their land, this is going to affect that creek because it's going to seep into that creek. I don't care how you do it or how you put it. I'm a taxpayer, and I want this stopped, and we voted for you, and this is a pristine area. How would you like this in your front yard? We don't want it and have the smell of everybody dumping their RV crap right there. And not only that, we don't want the traffic coming in and out because we have a 2-lane road, and this is going to impact our going home and coming in because we only have one way in, one way out, and this is a 2-lane highway. It takes a lot. It's horrible that somebody from somewhere that is not born and raised here come in and decide our fate for us. This is wrong. Anyway, I wanted to give you my issue on this and my feeling on this. We're all in this together in our community here. We really want to fight this. We don't want this to happen. We want to keep our park, our little place, recreational. This has been a kept secret for years, and now they want to change it. You guys want to change it, or listen to them to how they want to change it. We've lived here for 30 years. This should be our say. Anyway, how can you buy a piece of land and decide you're going to do this and do that? That's wrong. We don't want that here. We want to keep it the way it always was. It never was an issue until now, and then all of a sudden now it's an issue. But anyway, there's plenty of places to put this dump station in that RV place other than here. And we want to have that done the way it is. We want to leave it the way it is right now. So I'm asking.
Hi, my name is Tony Neff. I live at 78 Zircon Drive. I'm calling about case number LDC 21-00021. I'd like to make my opinion known that I am in opposition of this. I'd also like to know why we were not informed directly. As the trailer park was, they each got their little postcards stating that. I never received one, nor did any of my neighbors receive one. There are so many reasons why this should not go through, and I will email those reasons today. Besides the environmental impact that it could have, we have one way in here, one way out. When it floods, we don't get in or we don't get out. what does that look like for us down the road if this goes through? We don't want this to happen. Thank you.
And that is it for public comment.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have any other public comment?
No, that's it for this item.
Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions of either the applicant or Brooke. Who would like to start?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I'll just ask a couple quick questions. Brooke, we heard a couple of comments there regarding notification. Can you, I know in looking at it, there's a distance away from the site that's required to be notified. How does that work in relation to all of the homes that are located off of Town Drive, both immediately east and then to the southeast of the site?
So we are required to notify residents within 750 feet. So we did that 750-foot radius, then all of those people are notified. That's why you're hearing a lot of the mobile homes that are directly above, because they are within that 750 feet. I have spoke with a few of the other residents in that area and kind of their addresses and some of that. They fall outside of that 750, some up 1,500, 2,000 feet is sort of what we're seeing. You know, it is sort of that situation where we're not having the nabs or the cabs that make it challenging to get this information. But per code in the law, we have notified correctly on this.
Okay. Thank you for that, Brooke. And then second question, this one I think would be for you, Dave. I see on the plan, and I appreciate the discussion about the oil water separator that either came from you or from Brooke, but how is the detention basin that's shown on site, is that basically receiving sheet flow from the paved area, or is that only receiving drainage that has been captured and routed through an oil water separator before it goes into the detention basin on the site?
With the requirement and this discussion with staff, we're going to be required to send the water. It would be capturing the water coming off of the asphalt area in association with the site development. So you have a concern at that point about petrochemicals, and there is a requirement, as Brooke mentioned during his presentation, that we provide some type of petrochemical separation and containment. Now, that can oftentimes be done in terms of the catch basin, which the overall grade where that would have to outflow may not work as well with our detention basin. So there may be some other options. We'd like to have it open and make sure that we provide either an appropriate catch basin to treat this, or a lead or some similar acceptable standard. There are other methods to do this. I've talked to Kathleen, our engineer, about it. She's done this, other types of treatments that are kind of a lead type standard. Any way you look about it, we'll have a requirement through the code that we're going to have to treat for petrochemicals. So there is a safeguard there. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and I guess I'll follow up with Brooke on this. My understanding is, if we're sending the water, sheet flow or untreated into the retention basin, we're not really doing what needs to be done. So is there, the system that we're looking at, or any kind of requirements in place? I didn't see the specifics in the conditions, but basically, as Dave says, the petrochemical or oil water separator, is that occurring to stormwater runoff prior to any infiltration of that, or discharge into the public waterway?
Certainly, this was a concern of mine also, and I spoke at length with engineering, both our engineering manager and our engineering techs who are actually out in the field and helping to monitor this. This comes through, I believe it's a SM4 program, which is a state administrative program. The county, Sparks, and Reno are under that. That's through NEDP. that requirement for the inlet. So with all that would have to be moved to an inlet. We wouldn't allow it to sheet flow directly into the drain, into the basin. It needs to hit an inlet, go through the inlet. That inlet is required to have an oil grease separator and then would go out into the detention basin.
Okay, that was what the answer that I was looking for, Brooke. So I appreciate that. And then just one last question along those same concerns with the dump station. How is that? I understand that that's going to go to the sewer, the new sewer line, and I see the requirement that the sewer line needs to be in place before the project can be given a certificate of occupancy. What is is there any potential holding tank or any separation that is occurring between the dump station inlet and the sanitary sewer line? Or is that purely just a catch basin with a direct pipe to the system?
You know, I'm not, and I'm sure there's different dump stations and how they're managed and how they work. That will have to go through both county health and the NDEP, and so they'll have their standards that they set and requirements for that to prevent that. Additionally, you know, we will require for any of our sewage or on-site sewage that operations manual, and that will help with, you know, if there is spillage, how they're cleaning it up, how they're retaining that, how they're maintaining that, making sure it's operational and that. And so with that, we had that sort of assurance that this would prevent not only, you know, the potential contaminants, environmental, but also reduce odors and opportunity for pests or other things like that. So
okay, and I appreciate that. I do remember that from the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the follow along to that is, what is staff's thinking? As Dave mentioned, the applicant mentioned in the presentation that the location for that is open. Currently, it appears that the station is located in the AE zone portion of the site, as opposed to the X zone. Has staff considered, my concern obviously is that there's an inlet there, going back to my initial question in terms of any kind of protection, the further away from the flood zone seems to be the better approach. So I don't know what staff's thoughts were based on how it was presented in the application.
Yeah, and engineering review that they didn't seem to have large concerns about that, but I can see the issue for that. As the applicant mentioned, that I believe that could easily be, they are open for that to be moved. And you know, if we'd like to condition that, or the idea that is moved to a different location that would be deemed more appropriate, or could potentially reduce any risk that we'd see going into our detention system or through the floodway system. So.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. That answers my questions for now. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions. I guess question for Brooke regarding the steamboat buckwheat. You know, this is obviously an issue in this part of town. Condition number 12, you know, talks about developing a requirement for a survey, but there was discussion about relocating the species. In your conversations, I mean, I understand the taking associated with, you know, sensitive species, but do you feel that there's a need to essentially bolster that condition to go beyond just doing a survey and require that, you know, a successful relocation plan be developed?
I would hesitate to do that because it's not really within the authority of the city. That will come under the state authority who manages that for the federal government. And so us requiring, one, we have the survey, one, we know what's there, two, they need to go to the state and the appropriate agency and gain the appropriate permits. And they're the experts who will determine what should be appropriate or the best way to handle that and move through, and working with the federal government who manages that species, and then as the state as those that are administrating and working through that.
Okay. No, appreciate that clarification. With the trail connection or the trail component, I guess I was a little bit unclear. Dave, maybe I'll throw this at you first. What the current condition of the trail network is? I guess I don't remember there being a well-established trail through there, and I guess I'm trying to understand what the benefit would be of, you know, providing interpretive signage and having a trail go through if it doesn't connect to anything.
Well, ultimately, that would connect to the property to the north under some preliminary level thoughts or designs at least. They've had conversations with the Washoe County Utility Department as well, who is managing this sewer line and reclaimed effluent line extension down into this area. That will ultimately connect elsewhere. They're going to have, I think it's either a 10 or a 12-foot wide trail. They need it for service access, so it would be a joint use both with the public agency for their sewer access and water line access, and also provide a pedestrian access. There is already a trail in the area on the eastern side of the creek that kind of runs a little bit higher, probably a third to a halfway up the hill towards the houses, and that appears to get a reasonable amount of use. This would just be another pedestrian amenity. And part of the benefit that comes out of it, there is a requirement in the MU zone properties in the city that 1% of your construction costs go towards pedestrian amenities. Trails, interpretive signs, benches, artwork, things like that fall into it. So this helps us meet that. It's kind of hard to apply pedestrian amenities to a boat and RV storage or mini storage, but we do have the advantage and opportunity of the Steamboat Creek there.
Yeah, and I understand, you know, the requirement to provide that 1%. I'm just wondering if, you know, there's more benefit of putting it on like 395 frontage portion of the property where there's actually, you know, some heavy cyclist use. But wanted to also ask about the location of the building in the AE floodway and why you, or just, you know, in terms of a project design, didn't consider having that component of the project at least outside of the AE.
In appropriate traffic movement and trying to get people in and out, and how far we would need to be from the intersection of South Virginia Street, Old 395, it kind of pushed us over into that area. We are going to have to elevate that building. That's the only thing on the site that would have any flood concern component. Everything else is just going to be either blacktop or canopy pillars that come down. It was more of a decision to try and get simply far away from the intersection to make sure that any of the movements going in didn't impede other traffic on the road. And that's why we pulled it down as far as we did.
And Brooke, maybe I can follow up with you on that question, because that was a concern. You know, really the only other building that's in the area is that engineering firm building that's across town drive there. And there, as I understand it, outside of the AE zone, it seems like an appropriate requirement to put the only proposed structure on the site outside of that zone for flood concerns. Was that a consideration for staff?
Yeah, I think that was reviewed, and also look at that constraint of access, as Dave was saying. It makes it challenging to move at that corner because then your access needs to come in on that right side, and how parking works, and then how we're trying to do one ways and loop around. So I think we did consider that. We did kind of look that we do have the opportunity. I mean, there is not an opportunity, but that AE is something that we can do. And in this case, because of some of those other constraints, it did seem appropriate. We do have Mike Michelle on line too, that can speak a little bit in more detail about, you know, if you want more detail about the AE zone and the building in that, and some of the stipulations and requirements that will be required to do that.
I think the responses are good. I guess, Madam Chair, if I could, the only other question I had was just clarification in terms of the timing of what that proposed sewer line is. I don't recall hearing that in the presentation. If I missed it, I apologize.
Brooke, I can go ahead and answer this, as I've had the conversations with Alan Jones over at Washoe County Utilities. My last conversation with him, initially they had planned on doing the sewer line all in one phase. They're still working on some of the easement, I-dotting and T-crossing on the southern part, and that would be south of the Geiger grade area where it crosses. So they've broken it into 2 phases. They're hopeful that they can do both phases at the same time, but they're also moving forward with a dose of reality that if this southern area, if they don't get all the I's dotted and T's crossed on the easements, that they can still work on the north part. It's probably, they were hoping for this year to start construction of it. It may be over the next year or 2 is kind of the feeling I was getting. If things linger on too long, could go longer than that, but we are contingent. We have to have that in place. This doesn't really work on going with a septic system because of this, the flood area that we're in and all that. So we realize that we're going to have that sewer, and we'll be in communication with Washoe County Utilities, and hopefully the timing will mesh up well.
So that building across the street is on septic right now? It must be.
That building, yeah, there's no sewer out here right now to that. That is on the leach field.
Okay. Thank you both for those responses. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, other questions?
Madam Chair, may I?
Mr. Marshall.
Brooke, looking at condition 7, and this follows on Commissioner Johnson's line of questioning, I'm trying to find where in the conditions that has the substantive performance measure that would require the treatment of sheet flow prior to discharge to a detention or retention. And I think you directed us to 7. I don't really see it there. Is there someplace else that might be?
It actually is not, would not be a condition. It's actually within the Public Works design manual in our code. And so it is a requirement per code, and we don't condition the code. So in talking with the text, that oil grease separator at the inlets is a requirement. So that we don't have a condition related to that. I brought that up because I wanted to make sure that we understood that is something the city does. It's a requirement per our code.
So then, looking at the actual design, that there is no, I couldn't find any facilities or description of any sort of, catchment or something for the sheet flow coming off. I assume it's going to be oriented to drain a particular direction, and it looks like I can't tell if they're topo lines after grading, but it looks like it's moving, towards the creek.
Certainly, yeah, be moving towards that. We'd anticipate towards the detention center from the natural slopes. Now that can be modified. This is a special use permit. We're looking at the appropriateness of the use. So as we go through the building permit and that building permit process and reviewing those building permits, that's when we'll start to really apply those public works design manuals. We'll be required to see some curb and guttering, some channeling of that, and then requiring all that to flow through a inlet and the grease oil interceptor prior to the detention.
I guess I'm trying to find something, Brooke, that I can hinge my findings on based, for no adverse environmental impact. And if all that is, I can see the separator being something that's going to be required by code, but there isn't anything that we can necessarily hinge on that, other than a condition that this will be the necessary infrastructure will be in place.
Sure, and we do have Mike Michelle, our engineering manager, and he knows a lot more in depth on that planning manual and can tell you a little bit more of the procedure and how his staff will review that and move forward.
Mike, do you want to take a shot at that? And maybe also comment on, is there something we can add to condition 7 that would provide you with the necessary performance standard to ensure that everything is contained on site?
Hi, Commissioner Marshall, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, good. You know, if it's okay, maybe we can add a condition that would better satisfy everyone's concern that stormwater would be filtered before entering the detention basin and before anything gets percolated into the groundwater. I would be comfortable with that. It's part of our design manual anyway, but if it provides an extra level of comfort to you and the commission, I'm sure the applicant would not mind that condition being added.
Mike, when you say it's part of the design manual, is it a mandatory part of the design manual?
Yes, it would be mandatory. It's part of our larger stormwater permit that we have with Truckee Meadow watershed area. So it's something that we have to do. We're mandated to do that, and each one of these projects would have to adhere to that. So it would be filtered and treated before going into the detention basin.
Okay, thank you. Brooke, we recently had two similar type of projects up in Verdi. You know, one closer to the Truckee, one, or the lot, I think, was right on the edge of the slope down to the Truckee. Did either of them have dump stations associated with them?
No, they did not. They were, well, Heather Manzo worked on the other project, so I'm not completely familiar with what was complete on that site. I worked on the Verde site that was directly off the exit out there. They were proposing no management station and no dump. They were trying to really, because of the remoteness and limited of services, they were trying to really be as remote as they, or limit their utility use as much as they can. And so we weren't seeing a dump or sewage or a manager's quarters or any of those related facilities on that site.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Commissioners, other questions? Brooke, I have a quick question for you. There's a lot of regulatory agencies involved in the conditions in this project. In your opinion, do we have everybody on board within the conditions, regulatory, environmental, cultural, to do the necessary reviews on this project, bringing in the experts to make sure that every code and laws and regulations are met?
Yeah, and if you notice, as the conditions are written, it's prior to any building permit or any permit. So that would be grading. We're not going to allow grading or anything until we get the oversight that's needed. So I've included, the cultural. I have reached out. The state lands planner was noticed on this. They have some property in close proximity, and he reached out to me, and I went through that. He's also has passed on the report through the other entities and agencies that will be reviewing this. I haven't received any comment back for them, but I've tried to work very intimately with the state to make sure that we're fulfilling those larger permitting issues and the very important environmental issues that need to be addressed on this site.
Good. Thanks, Brooke. Seems like a lot of coordination. Thank you. Commissioners, if we don't have any questions, any other questions, we can start discussion. Somebody wants to start us off? If we have discussion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Munoz, I have a discussion. With the report from staff and the presentation tonight, is anybody seeing anything from the emails that we got, the voicemails we got, that hasn't been addressed? Because what I'm finding is everything meets the conditions, and everything seems kind of covered to me. So I don't know. I just wondering what you guys think.
Madam Chair, if I could respond to that. Yeah, Commissioner Munoz, I think to your comment and to the chair's comment about all the coordination and requirements for other agency approvals. I mean, they're the experts and the agencies with the authority to do the reviewing and the approvals sounds like they're lined up and will be doing so prior to any activity. So frankly, my comfort level is high given those conditions and requirements.
Commissioner Olivas, I would add on to that, and I concur. Basically all the comments, most of the comments we've heard were like, I think mitigated traffic was a big one, but this is a low traffic generator. Probably solves the problem better than other uses. The dump station I feel has been addressed, and as Chairman Gower said, it has other agency review. And I think that the comments towards the open space / park, I think that the city doesn't have much of an appetite to buy the land and turn it into a park, and I think that that's always a tough one because people been basically out on that land, private property, for 30 years, and they kind of feel like it's more open space out in the desert or something more so than it is private property, which it is. So I think that most of the comments I feel have been addressed.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I think also in response, Commissioner Munoz, that your questions, most of my questions were basically asking about the very items that came up in public comment. And I think that's kind of what we've heard here tonight. And even some of the issues that I saw with, the potential for the stormwater runoff and even the connection for the dump station. I think that the number of approvals that are still required on this and the number of eyes that are still going to be looking at it, and permits required through NDEP and Washoe County for all of the services. I agree with Commissioner Gower in terms of my level of comfort that the issues will be addressed. I think I was a little concerned when I read the staff report with the comments from Washoe County, which mentioned, a well permit or a septic permit, which I think were just boilerplate. I think obviously we're conditioned to not allow either of those two things. So I agree with your statements. I think we've addressed both the applicant and the city have addressed the issues and the concerns based on the project in front of us.
Other commissioners? Move on to a motion, maybe it sounds like.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Munoz, just one quick thing. To be honest with you, these ones are difficult for me because we get all this comment and all this concern about the project, but everything lines up how it's supposed to be. And I know nobody wants building next to them. I live in a subdivision where I didn't want building for years, and it didn't happen. But when it finally did, it's frustrating. It's not something I want, but there's not really anything I can do about it. And so I'm torn, not because of the presentation, not because of what staff's report is, just because how many people don't want it in the area. This is a rough one for me, to be honest.
Madam Chair, if I could add on to that, I do think it's one of those areas in which the directly affected publics are in Washoe County, not within the city. So I think it behooves us to take a harder look at these because these individuals don't have really elected representatives on the city council who appoint us. That being said, it does, in my mind, meet all requirements. I think the dump station is the one thing that gives me the most heartache, and it being, where it's located within the AE zone. And I personally would have more comfort if we condition it so it would be out of the AE zone on the property, and the applicant seemed to be amenable to that. So I guess I would ask that you all consider making that change. But other than that, it's, you know, I agree with the comments of my fellow commissioners that this is an authorized use within the city, and it seems that all the criteria have been met. I'm not, you know, I still think we have a, you know, our obligation is to see whether or not this is appropriate use given any particular factors that are present here. And the floodplain one is the biggest issue for me. And notwithstanding, there are other agencies that are going to be looking at this. I think we have the responsibility to look and see whether or not this is an appropriate use given its location, notwithstanding that other agencies may be reviewing it from their personal or from individual, much narrow slice. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. Commissioner Munoz, I wish I had great words of wisdom for you, but the only thing I can say is we have these findings that we have to go by, and sometimes, you know, I guess it's a good thing that there isn't one of a popular opinion on there or like or dislike from people. But you have the conditions just like we do. So I don't know if we're ready to move towards a vote or a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion if you're willing to accept one.
Absolutely.
Based upon the compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject conditions with the added condition that the dump station be moved outside of the AE zone.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I will second the motion with the added condition, and I appreciate the added condition because it helps me to make all of the findings.
Great. We have, I just wanted to make sure, I thought I saw Dave, the applicant, shake his head yes, that he was in compliance, but I'd like to get a voice of yes, that's okay.
Yeah, yes, that would be acceptable, that added condition. There was one other, and I'll just point out that there was one other that was brought up, and it's already in code, as Mike Michelle said, but on the chemical treatment, if you'd like to have that.
Thank you. Is there any other further discussion? Okay, Michelle, can you do a vote for us, please?
Kathleen Taylor?
Yes.
John Marshall?
Yes.
Peter Gower?
Yes.
Mark Johnson?
Yes.
Arthur Munoz?
Yes.
Paula Levis?
Yes.
Alex Velto?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you very much. Good luck with your project. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, everyone, and hopefully we'll get together soon.
Okay, we'll give everybody a couple seconds to move in and out, and then we'll move on to 5.2, which is case number LDC 21-00024, the Canyons, request for a zoning map amendment and a tentative map and special use permit. Shall I imagine we have a presentation from the applicant?
We
When
do.
you guys are
We have Mike Raley on the line, and I believe Garrett Gordon and Jack Dolan.
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. For the record, Mike Raley with Christie Corporation. As Michelle mentioned, I'm joined with Garrett Gordon, also representing the project applicant, as well as Jack Dolan, the project applicant. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a brief presentation to go through. Should be pulling up here in a second. Hopefully everybody can see this. The requests before you tonight are first a zoning map amendment to rezone 81.01 acres from a mix of SF15 and open space to planned unit development, a tentative subdivision map to allow for 71 single family lots, and a special use permit to allow for hillside development, cuts and fills, and disturbance of a major drainage way. For those of you not familiar with the project site, it's located directly east of the Palisades subdivision, which is currently being developed by Lennar, kind of at the base of the Virginia Range. This gives you kind of an overview here with the high school down below. The existing conditions, once you get up onto the site, you'll find that there's some tremendous views and quite a bit of kind of flat meadow areas when you get up on the site. These are some pictures to show kind of the existing on-site conditions. This project has some history. Was originally proposed as a tentative map with a kind of a more of a typical suburban approach to development. That had some concerns raised with staff, and the project was essentially withdrawn. When we were first brought the project, we went and met with city staff and met with the community development director, and it was suggested that given the fact that this is really kind of a unique site and sets the stage for future projects in the area, that a PUD approach would be a good way to kind of create set the standard, so to speak, of what goes on that Virginia range. And so that's where we got with the PUD approach. It is a total of 71 units. The handbook does allow for a mix of single family options. So if you look at the land plan, we have kind of the typical suburban lots, we have semi-custom lots, custom home lots, and even some duet lots on the map, which really kind of appeals to a wide range of the population and a broader demographic. The PUD also creates a unique desert contemporary theme that will be carried forward. It really sets the project apart from what you see typically within Damani Ranch. The PUD also mandates some site adaptive architecture, including walkout basements and step foundations. In fact, the grading on this plan compared to the previous project is reduced by up to 70%. So it's a tremendous difference in the amount of disturbance on site. The tentative map and PUD standards actually exceed that of the hillside ordinance, and I'll get into that here briefly. The density overall is 0.88 units per acre, so less than 1 unit per acre. In addition, the PUD will provide for numerous amenities within the project, including a public trail system. This is the land use plan. As you can see, everything in green is open space. And what's significant about this is, if you can see my cursor, there's a large prominent knoll that's visible from the valley. That is entirely preserved with this updated plan. So what that does is, not only does it provide nice open space and nice visual view, but it also helps to serve to screen the development that will occur on site. Just a comparison with the zoning, as you can see, the current zoning we're requesting PUD is a mix of SF15 and open space. If you compare kind of the green area on the left side, which is the current zoning, with the green area on the right, you'll see that far more open space is preserved with the PUD plan. It's actually about 64% of the site, just under 52 acres is preserved as open space. So it reads better in the PowerPoint. I kind of broke the plan into 3 parts. This is what we were calling the lower portion of the lower villages, Canyon Creek and Canyon Crest, as you come in from Mineshaft Drive and Claim Jumper Way. So Mineshaft Drive will be extended into the site as a cul-de-sac with only 11 lots, and then Claim Jumper Way will be extended as kind of the primary access up through the project. So those are the lower homes. And then here you can see the knoll being preserved. These lots include walkout basements, as do these duet lots, which will be entirely screened by the existing knoll. And then it moves up kind of to the north. These are all walkout basements. Moving up to the north, you have our custom lots that are served by this private roadway, which will actually extend into the adjoining property for a future secondary access for that project. This is the overall plan. I've got it so that north is to the right, just so it's easier to see. It kind of gives you an idea of the overall plan and how it's laid out. This road does extend outside of the project boundary. However, that is within an existing easement, and the adjoining property owner has provided affidavits showing his concurrence with that. One other thing that I'll get to about the trails, but the PUD approach I think it's significant because it ensures really strict grading standards and helps protect those natural features on site. That was a big concern of staff and the community, as I understand it, with the last map. And we've, as I mentioned, changed dramatically to reduce the amount of on-site disturbance and how we really go about developing the site and working the project into the site rather than working the site into the project. We also have some stringent architectural design guidelines. The applicant really wants to promote the use of the native materials and vegetation. If you've been out there, you'll see that it's very rocky. Incorporating that natural stone into the architecture, into the community amenities is a key feature throughout the PUD. We do protect wild horses by adopting the identical standards that were included within Daybreak. We do also require a contribution to the city's affordable housing program with every unit that's built. As I mentioned previously, we allow for a mix of single family unit types, which will have varying price points appealing to that wider demographic. And it requires a very sensitive approach to development. Right now, there's a lot of people that go up and actually hike on the trails that are out there now. And the trails that are existing are really kind of service access road for the power company and whatnot. And those are shown here in black. Not only are those being preserved, but we're going to expand the trail system, providing connections to the adjoining parcels and within the community itself. Those trails will all be maintained by the homeowners association and are open for public use. So the people that are enjoying taking their walks and walking their dogs and hiking up there now will continue to do so with development of this project and with preserving the open space without very little impact to what's occurring now. As I mentioned before, the theme is to keep things natural. We do not plan to pave the trails, rather keep them in a natural, more of a natural format and frame them with some of the natural materials that are found on site. One thing that we are looking at doing is creating, with the stone that's on site, a little stone cabin that would be within the open space and within the trail network that would provide a community gathering area. Perhaps, you know, in the summertime, community socials, that sort of thing. The open space also, within the open space, it's allowed a bicycle pump track, some community gardens, even vineyards. And these give some examples of kind of the use of stone to create various amenities such as benches and whatnot along that trail system. The project entry, this does show a gate. It is not proposed to be gated, but kind of shows that desert contemporary theme that I discussed earlier, as well as the architecture. Once again, step foundation plans, contemporary theme for the architecture, which will set it apart from the projects down further below. This is just kind of some quick concepts of the architecture. The use of native materials. One concept that the handbook requires is the use of that natural stone, creating, for example, trail markers by including the stone within those rock cages, as they're called, using stone to highlight the trail system. There is some mature vegetation on site in terms of pinyon pines. We're actually even looking at relocating some of those within the open space and strategically locating them near benches, that sort of thing, to really create more of a natural feel on site than what most projects would have. We have adopted urban wildland interface standards within the handbook that exceed that of standard code. Although the project is within an acceptable response time of the Des Moines Ranch Fire Station, we also have a condition on the project to include fire sprinklers in the homes. New development that abuts open space or common area will have 30 feet of defensible space with an additional 100-foot buffer zone per the fire department standards. And then on top of that, the HOA was to maintain an additional 20-foot buffer above and beyond kind of the standard buffer. So not only does that exceed fire department standards, but it actually enhances the fire department's ability to access the wildland areas to the north and to the south over what exists today. Mr. Dolan has worked closely with the horse advocates for actually quite a while now. As I mentioned earlier, we did adopt the Daybreak standards. However, at the request of the wild horse advocates, we are volunteering this additional condition. We've run this by Brooke, and it will be added into our handbook. And it's that in addition to the Daybreak language, we would like to add that during developers' construction, Developer will require its contractor to provide a gate monitor for roadway crossings with an emphasis on monitoring areas on the property with potential egress to existing improved areas. So in other words, while that construction is going on, there'll be a monitor on those gates so that we can ensure full compliance with the standards that are in the handbook. In wrapping up, Garrett and I are both available to answer any questions you might have. We are in concurrence with the staff report and all of the conditions as presented with that additional horse condition, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Mike. Brooke, is it you again? We can't hear you, Brooke.
Brooke, you're on mute.
Apologize. Yes, it's my show tonight. Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. I'll pull up I've got a brief presentation and we'll move on from there. Just to verify that you can see my screen. Yes? Okay. This is the canyons. This did come in.
We can see your screen, but not the presentation.
Yeah,
not the presentation.
It's on the wrong screen if you're using two screens.
Yep. Desktop.
All right. Did that help?
Yes.
Okay. Just to go an overview of the proposal because there are many moving parts and
hey, Brooke, let me pause you for a sec. Just one thing, can you go up to display settings at the very top and then click the drop down arrow and go to duplicate. Yep.
That one.
That one.
Good.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. I just want to briefly go over the proposal. This is a little unique because we are seeing oftentimes we'll see a master plan amendment and a PUD. There is an associated tentative map and we're doing the special use permit. So we are bundling those all in one review. There are some intricacies to that I'll go through a little bit as we move through. So the first one we're looking at is that zoning map amendment. That's to that planned unit development. And what comes with that is that associated handbook. That associated handbook sets those standards and requirements that are kind of outside of code or above code. As was demonstrated very well by Mike, that current zoning, that SF15 in open space, and the density in open space with the new project. So from our current zoning with this new zoning, we're seeing the advantages of housing being closer, the development being closer and clustered a little bit more in that. And we're seeing additional open space being provided in that. You know, really when we look at this appropriateness of the PUD process, we want to look at why we want to run this through a PUD. As Mike went through, there's additional architectural standards that they'd like to maintain in this. This is a sensitive site as we're starting to approach some steeper slopes where we're looking at some of those hillsides, some of the gradings, some of those notable features as Mike mentioned that knoll. Additionally, we have some drainages. We have other biological concerns and the Virginia range concerns on that. And so having a handbook that helps to give direction and guidance to all those is really helpful and appropriate in this case. And this also helps to support as we move through with that tentative map. And so that we're making sure that we have basically the intent and the overall as we're reviewing the tentative map. And more importantly, as that tentative map, if this moves forward, we move to a final map, and that gives us a solid foundation to really do that intricate, detailed analysis that we'll do at final map level. And then finally, something that's a little bit different on this that you wouldn't see through a standard zoning and stuff like that, that we have applied on the Daybreak project and some other proposals is that affordable housing agreement. That is currently being drafted as this moves forward to City Council. We will have a final draft for their review and those terms will be negotiated at that City Council level. Secondly, we have that tentative map. You know, big findings on that tentative map. We're looking for that availability of services and infrastructure. We're looking for that fire protection. In this case, we're showing we have additional concerns because of the location in the Virginia range and additionally those accesses. And so we have additional fire conditions associated with this. We're looking at our overall traffic and connectivity and utility issues on that of how we can get not just this development, but as we continue to develop, we want to make sure that we provide connectivity. We're not building dead end neighborhoods and some of these other things. So the tentative map gave us an opportunity to really look at that. And then specifically, we have some horse conditions or horse related language within the handbook, but in the tentative map, we really come down to specific things that will be done at the time of construction. And then with that tentative map, that will all be reviewed back. We've reviewed that and it meets that conformance with the associated PUD handbook and what they're proposing. The last one we have are those special use permits. We have cuts and fills, hillside development, and additionally disturbance of a major drainage way. So in those, we're looking with special use permits and the overall findings, some of those lighting impacts. So we're seeing dark skies being provided, the protection of the hillside and open space. As we see the development's really been congregated into areas. Additionally, we're seeing a mix of product types and a denser product type, which reduces overall grading. And we're seeing some other creative methods through hillside adaptable architecture and some of those larger lots that will protect that land in other ways. Additionally, the last one is sort of the protection of those drainage ways, making sure we're maintaining those natural systems and they're functioning properly. We have had public input. There were 3 or 4 more comments that came in just prior to the meeting. I have not been able to include those in the slide, but they were forwarded to the Planning Commission. A number of those sort of dealt with a number of the issues that we've tried to address through the handbook and the tentative map. Additionally, as far as traffic and some of those other natural systems and those impacts. We've also had I had a discussion with the landowner to the south of this project, another large owner that has another large parcel. On many of these large 40-acre parcels that we're seeing up there, what we have is a shared common access agreement that runs up the boundary line and would go on both sides of that. So he had some concerns that there was potentially some of the grading or some of that could impact his potential to build that access in the future. We had a pretty lengthy discussion, and there is the ability to maybe to let go of that easement and establish an easement in another place. So we have a condition that sort of maintains the easement as it is, but does allow that easement as maybe possible connections to this site, further up this site, coming off the cul-de-sac are available in some of those, so that from a city point of view, we're providing overall connectivity across that hillside. Second, we've had a landowner to the east of the project. Mike spoke with this briefly. That's the small portion of road that goes onto that site. We have received that owner affidavit and that agreement that proposed roadway is fine. This associated SUP would take care of the associated grading in that. Additionally, we've had horses with the Virginia Rain horse advocates. The applicant has proposed that additional condition in discussing with the horse advocates, and staff does not object to that condition. And then thirdly, just because we do have a number of things to make a motion on tonight, I just want to recommend proposals or how to move forward with proposals. Obviously, the first one is recommendation of that approval of the PUD and handbook to the city council, or your decision to city council. Secondly, would be that approval or your denial of the tentative map and those associated special use permits. We bundled those together because they really don't stand alone in any way nor benefit. Additionally, on that tentative map, look is if the commission would like to, the addition of that applicant's condition request or any other conditions. And then just one more reminder, there is a condition, the tentative map and SUP approval, if it is approved this evening, they would be contingent on city council's approval of the PUD and handbook. And so without the approval of the handbook and the PUD, the tentative map and associated SUPs would no longer be valid. With that, I can end my presentation. Staff could make all the findings in all of the presented applications and recommends approval of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Okay, commissioners, let's do disclosures. Commissioner Velto.
Mr. Velto, I spoke with the applicant and I am familiar with the site. I also received emails.
Commissioner Libas,
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Marshall,
Spoke with the applicant's texted with the applicant's representative and read the emails.
Commissioner Munoz,
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Johnson,
Mr. Johnson met with the applicant's representative, familiar with the site, and received and read the emails.
and Commissioner Gower,
Gower, same disclosures.
Commissioner Taylor, same disclosures. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
We received emails. All emails were forwarded to the Planning Commission and staff and have been entered as part of the record. I did not receive any voicemails for this item.
Okay, thank you. We will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions of the applicant or Brooke. Who would like to start?
Madam Chair, I have a kind of preliminary question that I just kind of understood what's happening, and and this is, I guess, maybe a question to Carl, is I did not understand from either the public notice or the agenda that we would be adopting or recommending approval adoption of a PUD, the handbook itself. Are we sufficiently noticed for that action? I'm just comparing the agenda item with the actual what we're required to do under the proposed motion. And I, for me personally, I did realize I needed to be reviewing the PUD until when I just started looking at this, unfortunately, today. So I'm a little worried. Are we?
I think we've noticed it appropriately. I'm looking at the agenda item now.
Doesn't mention the PUD handbook, the manual. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah,
separate action that we're taking.
Well, it's a recommendation.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's most of the same as with the zoning.
Right.
And maybe I'll chime in as well. For the record, Angela Foos, acting CD director. So the way it was noticed, this is a zone change. When we do a zone change from a specific zoning to a PUD, that's what the process to do that is a zoning map amendment. So this was noticed for a zoning map amendment from the existing zoning, which is open space as SF15, to a PUD, planned unit development zoning.
That just changes the zoning though, right?
Correct. So that is kind of step one, is to apply a new zoning, that PUD zoning. Because Planning Commission just makes a recommendation to City Council, you're not the final vote. On the tentative map and special use permits, you guys as Planning Commission are the final vote on a tentative map and special use permit, unless it's appealed and then it goes to council. So in this case, the PUD automatically still has to go to council before the tentative map and special use permit can be technically implemented.
And I understand that, Angela. I'm just trying to get at, the fact that there's nowhere mentioned that we're adopting that we're recommending that the city council adopt the PUD handbook.
So on the agenda, it does specify that this is a recommendation to City Council for a zoning map amendment to a PUD zoning, along with that tentative map and special use permit. And then as well as when you guys make your motion, you'll do two separate motions. One is your recommendation on the PUD zoning, and the second is your decision on the tentative map and special use permits.
I think we're talking past each other, but
No, I understand what you're saying in terms of there's no mention of the PUD handbook. However, I believe that the handbook is always associated with a PUD. You don't have a PUD without a handbook. So I think they go hand in hand. So I think that we're all right with this notice, with this agenda title.
whenever you adopt a PUD zoning at the same meeting, you have to adopt the handbook?
But there's always a handbook associated with a PUD.
But it's at the time, at the meeting that you're adopting it?
Yes.
Okay.
And the PUD is the new zoning. So the handbook is basically the new set of zoning standards. So that's, we might be talking semantics here, but the new zoning will become PUD.
Are we good, Carl, based on your recommendation?
I think we're good. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So, questions of the applicant or?
Actually, Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, can I just follow up real quick? Because I think one of the questions that I had was how, and maybe it's been a while, or the last time we did this, I was getting a printed copy, but the agenda packet didn't actually include the PUD handbook. It was separate. So anybody that wanted to get the PUD handbook, the actual handbook, I'm not sure that's available for review for either the general public. I mean, I had to go into a zip file and download it to grab the actual handbook from the packet that we were sent in the email.
I received it from the link, the meeting information link, the PUD. No, it wasn't a zip file.
The entire 100 and some odd pages of handbook?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because of the length of that handbook, I applied a link, so that was available through that link, and it would link to the handbook itself.
Okay.
And overall to minimize that, and because we kind of moved to that digital format a little bit more as we're moving these.
Okay, I must have missed the link because I had to get about it a different way. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we ready to go into questions of the applicant or Brooke? Who would like to start us off?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I'll ask a question, I guess, of Brooke. I noticed in the information that there's a water tank that is anticipated, but is stated that it's not included as a part of this. It'll be a separate application. However, it seems like it's tied to the main water line that is going to be used for the project. How is it that staff is separating those two items? Reviewing the whole application for a tentative map if it doesn't include what would be potentially backbone infrastructure that's required for the development.
Yeah, and the way that we approach that is on the adjacent property to the east. What we'd anticipate that would be the applicant would work with Tumwater, and they're currently working with Tumwater to secure one, the water rights, and then two, the building and the probably donation to help build that water tank. What we'd anticipate, not knowing the full design or the full build out of that, and as Tumwater moves through, Tumwater moves through, we would see that application coming through them. So there are cuts and fills and some of those others. They would apply for the SUP for those cuts and fills that would come to another public hearing. And then we'd look at the overall design coming through the utility versus sort of a general proposed design from the applicant. So we wanted to make sure that we had an overall design from Tumwater coming through and not approving that grading in case something changed or something through their standards changed.
Okay, and so then kind of similar to the last project where we were looking at some items that are in code, all of the requirements from Tumwa and the will serve letter based on this design is going to be a requirement at final map and building permit for this project?
That is correct. That is a requirement of the final map. We'll have to have those will serve letters will have to be there before that's issued. So they would not be able to move further into the building permit submittal and grading and site improvements until we get that final design, and we would have to have all will serve letters at that time. So we would have to have those plans, and that additional submittal through Tumwa would have to come through prior to that final map.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I have some other questions, but they're a little bit less tied to some of the findings. So I'd like to turn it back over to other questions before I get back into that.
Commissioners, other questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask a couple of questions regarding traffic and access, and I'm hoping that Mike has a aerial image that you can put up to show us how traffic is going to move in and out of the site?
I do. I'm just going to share my screen and pull that up for you, Commissioner Gower. Okay. Can you see that? Is that aerial view up?
Yes.
So this is Claim Jumper Way, which will be extended into the property, as well as Mineshaft Drive. So primary Mineshaft serves just those small number of lots. I believe it's 11 lots, where Claim Jumper will be extended to serve the majority of the project. So coming out, really the most efficient way out, even though there's multiple routes, the most efficient is to come down Claim Jumper to Palladium Mine Drive to Macaulay Ranch Boulevard down to Rio Wrangler Parkway, which then you can access, north-south from there. That's the most efficient. You could also come down Claim Jumper to Palladium Mine down. This is, I believe, Trail Rider down and up this way. There's actually about 3 different ways out. Like say the first one I noted is the most efficient. You could also actually come all the way down Claim Jumper to Precious Metal to Stanley and out that way. So there's really 3 means of accessing the site from Rio Wrangler Parkway.
Okay, thanks, Mike, for that context. And just to confirm that there's no issue to the north. In our last meeting, we had some conversations about access related to a daybreak tentative map and access further to the east and Sunny Hills. There's no access related issues going north with those Sunny Hills properties, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Other questions? Mike, I have a quick question. We received public comment, and I'm going to try and decipher this, that one of the emails we said that that the resident met with the owner and somebody else, and there was not going to be any exit on Trail Rider, and that some of the presentation was different in the homes. And I was wondering if you would be able to clarify that a little bit.
Sure, and I'm going to go back to the share screen. I think it'd be a little bit easier to see. And we were confused by that comment as well, to be honest with you. I spoke with Mr. Dolan. I believe the previous project, which I was not involved in, had a connection that came down to where most of the traffic came down to Trail Rider Way. And Mr. Dolan had agreed prior to move the accesses down to where they are. And I think there was some confusion that somehow that access had changed, but the access is in the same place that was proposed with the previous map as was discussed with the neighbors. So I don't know if some wires got crossed there, but it's my understanding that where the access is being proposed is exactly where they were hoping it was going to be.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question was actually within the PUD, the amphitheater. Have the neighbors heard about the amphitheater or had a chance to comment on that? And the reason why I ask is because on I think another project a while back in that area, the amphitheater was not positively received, and I'm not sure if it was in scale or in the same size.
This would be a very small amphitheater. It wouldn't be somewhere where you'd have major concerts or anything like that. And we have some pretty strict regulations in the handbook in terms of hours and amplified music and that sort of stuff. It's more of a, like if you're going to have a community type event, it's very small. Wouldn't accommodate large crowds or be conducive to people driving there type thing. It's really more of just a community amenity rather than something where you'd have people from all over the region coming to.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson, did you have some other questions you wanted to get into?
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. I had a couple of questions, and maybe they're more comments for the applicant in reviewing part of the presentation that both Mike and Brooke mentioned was the architecture that they were looking to do up there, and there's a number of items in the PUD responding to that, which I can appreciate, but I have some concerns. There seems to be some pretty heavy emphasis on both the design review committee to review everything and some desire to have the architecture be a desert modernist with some references to Palm Springs and some images that are not from our area. And I guess I would just throw out there, and I was trying to tie this to a finding or a comment or anything else, but I think there's some weakness in terms of what's defined. There's some materials that are missing with respect to what's allowable. There's a lot of comments about hillside adaptive architecture and walkout basements, but yet there's no allowance listed in there for some of exposed architectural materials that would be required for that, like exposed concrete or masonry. If you're gonna do that type of architecture, you're going to struggle to not have that as an allowable material. And I think there's some concerns that I have with respect to the just how some of that's been put together in terms of what the enforcement would be. And I know it seems a little bit strange for 71 homes to be concerned about what we're looking at, but if we're going to go to the trouble of defining and accepting a PUD handbook with some specific architectural requirements, I guess I would just throw out there that there are some items that maybe need to be concerned or maybe defined a little bit better with respect to, is it desert modern architecture in the Palm Springs vein or the Scottsdale vein or the Tucson vein? Is it 50s modernist architecture or is it actual, modern architecture of today? I think there's a lot of description in terms of what they're looking for. But then the images don't necessarily correspond with that or have the description correspond to that. So I'm trying to figure out a way to wrap this into either a question or a finding. So I guess I would just throw out there to Mike that, I don't know if you guys have looked at that. I know we talked about this in our meeting. If there's some appetite to maybe clean that up a little bit or define it a little bit better in order to allow for both the semi-custom and custom homes to have some ability to meet those standards.
Yeah, and as we discussed, Mark, I think it's actually a good idea. I think the standards could be actually expanded a little bit to give a little bit more flexibility, to be honest with you, to accommodate, especially like on the walkout basements, rather than requiring that an entire wall be stuccoed. Maybe we allow for some exposed concrete as an architectural element, those sorts of things. There is some language in the handbook that allows some discretion of the design review committee to approve it. But I think, incorporating some additional clarification before this goes to the council, we can work with Brooke to further define it. We would have no issue with that.
Okay. And then I guess the only thing I would also throw out there is if there's any kind of description as to what the requirements are for the design review committee. Is it actual members of the homeowners association? Is it members, actual members of the community? Is it a broader based where you're looking for any kind of professional input? None of that was in there, and I'm not sure there's any appetite to include that, but
we can certainly define it in the handbook, the makeup of the design review committee. We would have no issue with that either.
And I guess, Brooke, I'll just follow up with you. Again, this isn't a finding that I can make. I can't tie it to a finding for any of the conditions we're looking at here. I'm just raising my concerns, even going back to Commissioner Marshall's initial comments that we're being asked to approve a handbook that I think has some weaknesses, and I would be hesitant to approve it without voicing those concerns.
Certainly, and that is part of that process of that recommendation to City Council, is that recommendation that you would with the consideration that architectural standards be strengthened, and that we have a formation of how that design review committee, so that it becomes a recommendation, it becomes part of the record, and then council can take that into, as they review it, take that into part of the discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate that. Madam Chair, thank you for the discretion as I get into some architectural semantics.
I just heard you volunteer for the design review committee.
Absolutely not. all of my professors from school that drilled some of these concepts into me would be, haunting my dreams after that.
Commissioners, other questions?
Madam Chair, I have a few questions for Mike. Mike, can you walk me through the emergency access there? Is the secondary access?
Go back and pull up the plan if.
Yeah.
With me for 1 second here.
Is the secondary access through the for the lots, the big custom lots?
Yes, yeah, yes and no. Let me get back to the appropriate slide here, and it'd be a little bit easier to see, I think. So there's, like I said, there's two access points coming in. There's a connection between these two cul-de-sacs here that provides for an access loop, and then when you get up here to the custom homes, this road that takes off here will actually act as a secondary access connecting into a future project. And then these, this is an existing power line easement that could connect as well with an all-weather surface. But the fire department is just requiring that this road, and we basically designed exactly to the fire department's request, that this it be extended up as you see it here, which will provide the secondary access in the future. And then if this property were to be developed, we're talking, as Brooke mentioned in his presentation, to extend, rather than this being a cul-de-sac, it would actually, we would grant an easement to allow an extension of that road as well. So when everything is built out, there'd be quite a bit of connectivity.
So secondary access is contingent on the approval of development on either further to the, that would be to the east?
The extension of that access, yes, but like I said, we're meeting the fire department's requirements with the design now, and then we've also added the sprinkler condition as well to address it in order to ensure full compliance with the fire department's requirements.
I'm sorry, Mike, walk me through again how, if it's just for your project, the secondary access through the custom lots seems like it ends right there.
But you could connect this road here. You can connect, that could be served as a secondary emergency access as well, and that exists today.
So you would, in other words, if you've already, or you're ready to build out, and there's no project to the north, then you would connect to the dirt road?
Correct. But we still meet the fire department standard in terms of with the sprinklers and whatnot. We're meeting all of their conditions, even if these never connected to anything, we would still meet all the fire department requirements.
So in other words, sprinklering satisfies, you don't need a secondary access.
Right, because if you take the distance from this, because you have a secondary connection here, the distance here is allowed with sprinklers under the current code.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay.
Commissioners, other questions? Okay, I don't see any, so I think we can have some discussion. Somebody would like to get us started?
Madam Chair, if I could go back to kind of where we started this agenda item and the point about the PUD, I am a little bit concerned about that. Looking back at the staff report, looking at the how this is agendized, it does say in the staff report that Exhibit A is the PUD handbook, and the PUD handbook is not obviously part of the staff report. It wasn't online, and maybe Brooke, you can point me to a link in the staff report, but I looked through it during the discussion and I couldn't find it. So I'm frankly okay with the project, but I'm a little bit concerned about a procedural issue here.
Yeah, and I can try to pull that up and see how it was agendized. As it goes through Minitrack, there's the option with these larger documents that we have been linking them for that reference and to not to bog that down. And I think that's how that one came through and why it wasn't printed out. We had done that in the past and had those links be successful. And I don't know if it was an error on my part or within the system itself that those links were not available or not working correctly. I would have to look into that a little bit more and see what that was exactly happened there. And Angela may be able to, from a process to.
Yeah, I'll jump in, guys. So when you go to the city website, and I'm assuming that's how most of you get your packets as well, and you just go to the packet itself, you download it, and you go to print it. It does not include, printing it in itself does not include the handbook. However, when you go to each exhibit, and again, this is for everyone to, not just you, but everyone that's getting this information, you can click on the specific exhibit, and you'd have to know how to use a PDF document. But I'm on the website now. You do have the ability to link it, and it sounds like maybe a couple of you found it, maybe a couple of you did not. But if you just went and printed it directly with opening it and printing it, it does not show up. But the link is there, embedded in the staff report.
Do you want me to, I don't know if I have the power to share my screen, but I have the link in the exhibit, if that's helpful.
Yeah, if you can, I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Can you see that?
It's popping up now.
Yes.
Do you see that, Commissioner Gower? Exhibit A?
I do, yeah. Yeah, and I guess I've run into this before, so I don't use this particular interface, or for some reason when I pull it up, it looks different, but no, I see that. Okay.
So I think we're on discussion. You guys are trying to derail me here, and I'm just going to keep going forward. Commissioner Velto?
Yes, thank you. As far as the notice issue goes, I think it's sufficient given what's been explained. But if that is an issue that any of the commissioners have, frankly, I think that's something that if the applicant thinks that's an issue, we should take into consideration. And if the city thinks it's an issue, we should take into consideration. Otherwise, the remedy would be that it gets kicked back to us eventually if there is an open meeting law violation. So I don't necessarily know we should foreclose it unless the city or the applicant thinks it's an issue. It just seems like something that we, if they're both fine with it, both the cities, both Carl and the applicant, I don't necessarily think we should consider that.
I heard that Carl was okay, and I heard the applicant was okay.
Yeah, and I can actually let Garrett Gordon speak on our side from that, from a legal perspective, if you wish.
Real quick, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. We are comfortable that it was noticed correctly and agree with Mr. Hall that this item can proceed as agendized. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we have moved past the agenda item and public meeting noticing. Do we have discussion or comments within the commission about the project? Motions? Commissioner Johnson?
I'm sure, yeah, Commissioner Johnson, I think just to reiterate as a part of discussion, having gone through mainly the design portion and some of the specifics in this, I do think there's room for additional description and definition to help both the city's community development review and the applicant. So, and again, I don't want to get into too many of the specifics on it, other than it seems that both Brooke and Mike are comfortable with sort of the direction that I'm asking them to go in. So I would just include that as part of, or just request that some of that additional work be done as a part of any recommendation that's being made towards City Council for the PUD handbook itself. As for the tentative map and the special use permit, based on my review of the requirements in the PUD, I do believe that they've met the findings, and I appreciate the presentation at the beginning sort of demonstrating the difference between what's being proposed and what's existing. I agree it's a little confusing to be asking for a zone change to a PUD that then has a lot of specifics sort of buried within it. But based on our recommendations for what's being presented, I think that the findings that we're looking for can be addressed. So that's my comments on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Other commissioners? Do you want to make a motion, Commissioner Johnson?
Nobody else seems to be talking, apparently, so.
It's going to be a quiet new year, quiet 2021.
Okay, so just to make sure, are we looking, Carl, for two separate motions here? One for the zoning map amendment and then one for the tentative map and special use permit, or three different motions?
I would recommend that we do three separate motions. I think it's a little cleaner if we do it that way.
Okay.
And then since we have separate findings on all of them, so.
Okay. Well, then I will start in the case of LDC 21-00024, the Canyons. Based upon compliance with applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance and certify the associated planned unit development handbook with the recommendation that staff and the applicant review the architectural design standards, materials, and the makeup of the design review committee that are included in that handbook. And based on that, I can make the findings for planned unit development.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Velto, second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm just going to vote no on the motion because of my significant concerns with the lack of noticing that we're actually going to be approving the handbook as well as the zone change.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, can we please have a vote?
Kathleen Taylor?
Yes.
John Marshall voted no. Do you want to say no again, or you good?
I'll say no again because
Okay.
that wasn't a vote. That was
Okay.
a discussion.
Okay.
But thank you.
Peter Gower?
Yes.
Mark Johnson?
Yes.
Arthur Munoz?
Yes.
Paula Levis?
Yes.
Alex Felto?
Yes.
Thank you. It's approved 6-1.
Okay, thank you. We are looking for another motion for the tentative map.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I guess I'll just keep going. In case of LDC 21-00024, the Canyons, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the tentative map, and based on the applicable findings, I can make all of the findings based on the conditions.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Velto, second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, Michelle, can you help us with the vote, please?
Kathleen Taylor?
Yes.
John Marshall?
No.
Peter Gower?
Yes.
Mark Johnson?
Yes.
Arthur Munoz?
Yes.
Paula Levis?
Yes.
Alex Felto.
Yes.
Okay, that was approved 6-1.
Thank you, Michelle. And I'm just going to go right back to you, Commissioner Johnson.
Did I just do the tentative map or the special use permit?
Tentative map.
Do the tentative map.
It's been a long year. In the case of LDC 21-00024, the Canyons, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to the conditions, and I can make all of the findings.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Munoz, a second.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, Michelle.
Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
John Marshall.
No.
Peter Gower. Peter. You're on mute.
Yes.
Arthur Munoz.
Yes.
Paula Levis.
Yes.
Alex Felto.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good luck with your project. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We'll give
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, if I could, before we leave this agenda item, could I ask staff in the future to include a physical link within the staff report to something that's as important as the PUD handbook? I think we missed the boat on including an adequate ability for someone to access something that was as important for the decision. I don't think that should be embedded on a website in terms of, a way to get, there are multiple ways to get to the packet. That website that Chair Taylor showed is not how I use it. So if I could just request that in the future, I'd really appreciate that. And I know we've done it before, so thanks.
100% agree. We'll make sure that happens in the future correctly.
And I would strongly recommend that we include in any agenda item the adoption of the PUD handbook as an action to be taken or a recommendation for action.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gower and City of Reno. We'll give everybody a second to clear out and we'll move on to item number 6. Everybody's face just got a little bit bigger. Okay, agenda item number 6, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. I don't know if there is an update, but I'll ask Commissioner Gower.
Chair, I think our next meeting is, looking at my calendar, maybe the 20th, 27th. It's at the end of the month.
Okay.
But no meeting in the near future.
Thank you. Angela, can you help us with number 7, staff announcements, please?
We have not had any city council meetings since our last planning commission meeting right before the holidays. We do have a city council meeting coming up next Wednesday. 2 items on there that you will probably find of interest is the Prado development. That was before planning commission, over a year ago. So that is going to city council. And the other item was the 2 daybreak projects that you guys just recommended approval on. Those have been appealed. So those will be on an appeal hearing next week at City Council.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question on that? Just the Prado Ranch was, I think it was the beginning of 2019 that came before us, and then it went to council and was, I guess, continued.
It was.
So is the same project coming back to them now? Is that just with a 2-year delay?
The applicant continued it from city council, and it was a year and a half ago. You're right, when it went to city council. I think it was in March of 2019, the last time it went to council. And at that time, there was some flooding going on in the North Valleys, and so the applicant asked to continue it for a year so that they could work on a regional solution to the flooding. So they spent a year working with the entities, right? Reno Sparks, Washoe County, RTC, all those groups were working together to try and come up with a regional solution. Because they owned so much property next to Swan Lake, they wanted to be part of that discussion and amend their application to show how they could do that. So the application is, I wouldn't say significant enough. It's not different enough that it has to go back to Planning Commission. It's the same project. It's the same, industrial and residential, single family and multifamily. The biggest change that they made was to deal with the stormwater detention issue. They also provided additional information on fiscal information and traffic information. So all of that will be presented to council. Council may remand it back to Planning Commission if they feel it's a substantially different project, or they may just choose to vote on it.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Agenda item number 8, Commissioner's suggestion for future agenda items.
Madam Chair, we've been getting a lot of emails, and quite honestly, I've been getting other calls on Lake Ridge and the zoning issues there. Should we have an informational item on it, or is that, I know it's kind of up in the netherworld of the city council, but.
Yeah, kind of where that's at. At this time, there is no application to change the zoning. So this is, I think, more of the residents asking city council to initiate a zone change. So at this point, the only update I can give you is there's no update. No application has been submitted that would go to Planning Commission or City Council. If that changes, then it would come before you guys because it would be a zone change.
Thank you.
I think Councilmember Dewar is going to propose a zone change for that Lake Ridge. That's what I understand. So see how that goes.
We will wait for that eagerly.
Madam Chair, if I could also request to get an update in the near future in terms of where things are on the sustainability code. It's my understanding from council that the directive was to re-engage a working group or something to that effect. If we could just get periodic updates on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and maybe I should have brought this up as an update as well. So the zoning code, that's probably the bigger issue here. The draft zoning code is scheduled for a second reading, which is the ordinance adoption on Wednesday. Next step kind of in our process is we have a list of probably 20 to 30 different items that council has asked that we initiate text amendments or further stakeholder groups to update the zoning code. The sustainability ordinance is one of those. So the next step for us as planners is we'll put together a list of all the things that they want us to work on and initiate. We'll take that list to council and ask them to prioritize which ones in which order they want us to get through. Keep in mind, none of these items for the most part are short, quick items. I think most of these will take probably somewhere between 6 and 12 months to go through the stakeholder input, draft some policy. Everything will still come back before you guys because any text amendments do require Planning Commission approval. So of that 20 to 30 list of items, I think you'll be seeing a lot of those over the next probably couple years.
Is there a mechanism by which the Planning Commission can express its opinion on the relative importance of those 20 items?
The priorities, that's actually not a bad idea. We don't have a date yet when we're going to bring that list to council, but I think it might be worthwhile to bring that list to Planning Commission as well. And so then have you guys weigh in on what those priorities are. And that might help City Council to get your input before they make a decision.
Thank you. Just one stray thing, Angela, I sent you that invite to that workshop that we had on missing middle and techniques for, zoning and design techniques for providing missing middle housing. I would recommend that staff contact. I can give you the contacts and have that same presentation be given to us in this context. I think it was a really effective way for us to start thinking about, providing different sources or different types of housing within the context of a neighborhood and still maintaining neighborhood integrity.
Great. I'll reach out to you tomorrow about that.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Good items. Number 9, public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
I did not receive any public comment for this item, but I did want to let you know that I did receive more public comment for one of the items on the agenda that will be forwarded to you and staff and be entered as part of the record. So all those comments were received after the meeting started.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment and move on to item number 10, adjournment.
So moved.
Okay. Motion passes. Good night, you guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.